Welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back to each and every one of you. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day so far. And before we jump into things, I just wanted to say thank you guys so very much for 240 subscribers. That is an absolutely ridiculous milestone to be hitting this early in me making videos in this channel. I think the last time I made a video, I was thanking you for 140 subscribers. So now that we're already at 240 is completely insane. And thank you so much for that. I just don't make videos enough to thank you guys for each milestone. Like, I don't make enough videos to keep up with your ridiculous support with, like, all of the likes that we've been getting. Some of the videos I have are, like 15,000 likes or what, something ridiculous. Like, just some number that was, like, unfathomable for me. So thank you guys so much for the support. You guys are amazing. If you guys are new here, feel free to click that subscribe button. Click the bell if you want to be caught up with the notifications, because I do kind of upload sporadically since my main platform is Twitch. I do stream on Twitch first and foremost, so if you guys do want to go follow that, I will leave the link in the description as well. And today we're going to be testing out Borderlands 3, seeing how it runs on an i7 6700K and an RTX 3080. This game is an absolute beauty of a game in its own right, without even benchmarking it. I love this game. I've played it through and through a bunch of times already. Like, I love this game to its core. I love Borderlands on its own. And I've been playing this game outside of my YouTube channel. I've been playing this game on my Twitch channel just in my spare time while live streaming, and it has been running so smooth. It is amazing, but we will get more into that in just a quick second here. So we are currently running the game at 1920 by 1080, and we will be testing out 1440p and 4K as well. By just adjusting the resolution scale here, this game does not seem to even offer 1440p or 4K resolutions for me at all, but that's only because I'm not actually running a 4K monitor, so this game probably just doesn't support running resolutions higher than what your native monitor resolution is. So we'll just be tuning that based off of the resolution scale here as well. And as you can see here, we are running an unlimited frame rate cap here because we want to see exactly how this game is running, what the maximum FPS value that we're going to get is. So we're not going to cap it at all, just like we haven't been doing in any of the tests so far in any of the games we've run. And as you can see here, we are running the game in DirectX 12 mode. They have DirectX 12 and DirectX 11 support, so either way, you're good to go. I prefer DirectX 12 because it does offer a smoother experience. I'll go ahead and show you guys the difference between the two in the benchmark here. But from what I've noticed from the tests that I've done on my stream, the DirectX 12 performance gives you a higher the maximum FPS you get. Like, if instead of it only getting 70 FPS maximum, you're getting like 120 FPS maximum. The only difference might be that you have subtle like micro stutters every now and then, but I can tolerate those if I'm getting a slightly higher or a good chunk of FPS back. I can tolerate the slight micro stutters here and there, but we are running the game overall at ultra settings, completely maxed out. Like, everything cannot be turned up any higher. So let's go ahead and run the benchmark. As you can see, the last time I ran it here was just before Christmas, and I ran it on DX12 and got a 99.2 average with an average frame time of 10.08 frame time. So not bad, but let's go ahead and run the benchmark right now live with you guys so you guys can see how it runs while recording and all that stuff like that as well. So let's get into it. Alright guys, here we are in the in-game benchmark here. We're already getting over 100 FPS, which is awesome. Absolutely beautiful. We have the MSI numbers in the top left-hand corner, so if you guys want to really investigate how it runs on the CPU and GPU and all that stuff, you guys have those numbers up there. And so far, from what I've noticed, this game would benefit from a better CPU, of course, like that. There's no avoiding that, but it doesn't run that bad. We're only getting about 50% CPU usage here, and I'm wondering if we're going to notice any like micro stutters like I was seeing earlier. So far, nothing. So far, it's all good and smooth. We're getting 135 FPS right here. We're using 13 gigs of our RAM with only 5.5, roughly, a little under 5.5 gigabytes of our video memory, which is really good to see. We're using all of our 3080, which is also good to see because that means it's not like underutilizing our hardware, but also dropping frames. And I think the microstutters that we're going to be seeing here are going to be CPU related as well. So if you're running something a little higher end, like with more cores to it, like a 3600X from Ryzen, you would probably not see the microstutters. I'm pretty sure that's only going to be my CPU because it's older. It's not going to be able to handle some of the effects and explosions that well. But not too bad. This is running extremely smooth. Extremely smooth. And this is in DX12. I will also show you DX11 as well here in just a second. But not bad at all, man. Not bad. This is... I love this. Totally playable, beautiful, smooth. It's amazing. Alright, so if we look at our average FPS here, our average FPS actually went up. It actually went up from a 99 average to a 116 average as well. This was a much smoother test than the one I previously did on December 24th last year. So if you're okay with some slight microstutters here and there while it loads a few things here and there, then 116 FPS average with an i7 6700K and a 3080 on DX12 Ultra settings, that's pretty good. That's really good to me. That's, I don't know about you guys, but like, and it wasn't even using more than like 50% of our CPU on average, I would say. So that's really, really good. But let's go ahead and switch over to DX11 so that way we can see how that compares to DX12 numbers, and I will be right back with you guys with that. Alright, and we are back. I have set the game back to DX11 mode so we can go and test this out. Still an absolute ultra quality, everything on the highest settings it can be. Let's go ahead and jump into this. Comparing it to the 116 average that DX12 brought us, let's see how DX11 runs. Alright, so we are in game here running DirectX 11 at maximum settings in 1080p. And we're getting over 100 FPS here as well, but it's slightly lower than DX12. We're already, okay, now we're in the 70s and 80s. Still good quality though. We seem to be using less CPU though. We're only in the 39 to 40% range, which isn't that bad. It's using less CPU than it was before, but that's also because we're pushing less frames than before, so that might be self-explanatory there. But we're also using less of our GPU. We're only using about 70% of our GPU as well, so I think it does seem like a bit of a smoother experience though, less little micro stutters like I was saying before. DirectX 11 seems to be a bit of a overall smoother experience without the micro stutters down to 20 FPS or so, but your overall FPS, like the peak FPS number that you can get, seems to be lowered as well, because it seems to be using less of your entire computer. We're using less RAM, we're only at 12.5 gigabytes of RAM, but we're still at the same video memory, but it seems to be using less of our computer overall. So I would actually prefer to play on DX12. That's actually how I play the game on my live stream, is I do play it on DirectX 12 versions as well. But not bad at all. I think we're going to get about a 90 FPS average here, maybe 90 to 100, I think, is what I would wager this to average out as, but not too bad. Still not bad performance, still very playable. You're above that 60 FPS mark the whole way through, less micro stutters in there. Both are very playable experiences, so I can't complain either way. Alright, so if we go ahead and check our results over here, we got a 101 FPS average with a 9.86 average frame time, which that frame time is lower than the DirectX 12, and that tells me that it was able to hold this average more stably. There was less little drops down to maybe like 50 or 20 FPS. Like there was less micro stutters, so your average frame time is going to be stable, like more stable at the 9.8, like it's going to be dropping less, only at the cost of your peak FPS being lower. So whereas in DirectX 12 we averaged 116, now we're averaging 101. We lost 15 FPS just by switching DirectX modes. Not bad though. Average of 101 if you don't want to run DX12 because of whatever reasons, you can still get a very playable experience in DX12 or 11. So either way, it's awesome. Alright guys, so what we're going to do now is we're going to keep the game at 1080p only because I can't, like I explained earlier, I can't actually adjust the native resolution past 1080p here. So we're just going to adjust the resolution scale, and I think 200% is 4K. So we're going to run the 4K test first, and then we're going to run like maybe a 150%, I think. 150% is maybe 175 is 1440p, so we'll be doing some 1440p and 4K numbers that way, but let's go ahead and jump in and see what we get at 200% resolution scale. Alright guys, so we are in the in-game benchmark here running at 200% resolution scale at 1080p, so it's going from 1080p, 200% I believe is 4K numbers here. And it's not running too bad. Not running too bad at all, actually. We're getting in the 60s and 70s, so if you have a 3080 with an even older processor like mine, you can still get 4K 60 in this game, which is amazing to see. Amazing to see. We're only using 30% to maybe 50% maximum of our CPU here, 98% GPU, and we're in DirectX 11, if I didn't mention that before. We are in DirectX 11, so it seems to have kind of evened out that weirdness that we saw in DirectX 11 that first time around, where it wasn't using all of our 3080 or all of our CPU, like it wasn't using as much as it could. Now, because we're at 4K, our GPU is being solidly like 98-99% used, which is amazing to see as well. And we're still in the 60s. We are still in the 60s, a completely playable experience at 4K here.
Where are you guys?
If there are any micro stutters, it is extremely hard to notice. I'm not seeing any. I'm not sure if the video is showing any for you guys, but I'm not seeing any. And if they are there, they're so unnoticeable that I wouldn't complain about it in actual gameplay. So we're getting that 60 to 70 average in that range at 4K, which is amazing to see in DirectX 11. I cannot wait to see what we get in DirectX 12. I just can't wait. It's going to be amazing. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Alright guys, so as you can see here, in that 4K test, so we were running the game at 1080p with 200% resolution scale here, at DirectX 11, and we were getting 66.27 average FPS, which is, at 4K, in my opinion, perfectly playable, absolutely beautiful. Like, that is amazing. So if you're on an older CPU and you want to run your games at 4K 60, add this game to the list of games that you can run this game without compromises. Zero compromises, ultra settings at 4K, DX11, 60 FPS. That's awesome. Let's go ahead and switch over to DX12 now and see how this runs at 4K as well in DX12. See what those numbers increase to. Alright guys, we are back. We are back at 1080p with 200% resolution scale, which should be 4K resolution. Since again, I can't do native 4K because this game just will not allow me to even select the option. And we are still running the game at ultra settings, but now we're running DirectX 12 instead of DirectX 11. And so we're going to be comparing it to the 66.2 average FPS at 4K with DX11 to whatever we get in DX12 at 4K as well. Still, again, maxed out settings. So let's go ahead and see what this does. Alright guys, we are in game here, running at DX12 4K, well, 1080p 200% resolution scale, which is 4K. And we're only using... well, actually, we're using more of our CPU and more of our GPU, getting about 70 FPS here, 15.1 gigabytes of RAM right now. We're using 15 of my 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's a lot of RAM. That's a lot of RAM. And we're using almost 7 gigabytes of video memory as well. So we're using more on both of those things in DirectX 12 at 4K maximum settings, but it's still running about the same. I can't say I notice any any distinguishable differences between 4K max settings in DirectX 11 versus DirectX 12. Like it looks about the same to me. There's no micro stutters. Like it looks very smooth, very consistent, which is always good. So 4K 60 is just as much like playable on DirectX 11 as it is DirectX 12. If albeit your CPU is being used a little harder with more of your, like we're at 70-ish% CPU usage right there, but now we're dropping back down to the 40s. I think it was only that high because of the physics of the boards breaking. But overall, not bad at all. not a bad experience. We're still at that 4K 60, which I think is perfectly playable for a game like this. So there we go. We actually lost 3 FPS going from DirectX 11 to DirectX 12 in 4K, which is kind of surprising. So it seems like DirectX 12 is only really a benefit to maybe like 1080p or 1440p. 4K, I think you might be so GPU limited that there's no real benefit to running either or, maybe. That I'm not quite sure. But 63 average FPS at 4K max settings on DirectX 12 versus the 66 that we had inside of DirectX 11 at 4K max settings as well. Let's go ahead and turn the resolution scale down to about, let's do 150% in between 1080p and 4K. This should be roughly around 1440p. I'm not sure the exact resolution scale it'd have to be for 1440p, but we're gonna run 150% and just assume that that's 1440p. So you can, so give or take about 10 FPS off of the final results here, but this should be about 1440p results here. So let's go ahead and keep it DirectX 12 at 150% resolution scale, and let's just see what happens. Alright, so we are now in the in-game benchmark at 150% resolution scale, which should be around the 1440p numbers, getting 97, almost 100 FPS in this. 50% CPU usage, which isn't terrible. 13.5 gigabytes of regular RAM with almost 6 gigabytes of video memory of the 10 that we have available. So overall, not a bad experience to start off with. We're in the 80s and 90s in DirectX 12. At 1440p. That's awesome. This is super smooth. The frame rate isn't that bad. Like, the frame timing isn't that bad. We're not having, like, massive micro stutters, which is amazing. This is awesome. Yeah, I think this is completely playable. We're still in the 90s, using 13 gigs of my 16 gigabytes of VRAM, or of regular RAM, excuse me. So if you only have 16 gigabytes of RAM, it's not quite time to upgrade to 32 just yet, but I could see that being a very real thing in the next couple of years with video games, because I'm starting to see them pushing 12 to 15 gigabytes of RAM more frequently. So not quite time to upgrade the RAM yet, but you're getting there. We're getting close. But not a bad experience at all. I'm assuming we're going to average like 93 FPS here, which is incredible. Okay, so I was close on the average. We averaged 91 FPS at 150% resolution scale, which I think is around 1440p. So you're either going to get slightly less than that at like 85-ish, 80 to 85 FPS, or you're going to get more than that by turning resolution scale down, and you're going to get like in the hundreds at 1440p. So either way, this is still incredibly playable at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K in DX11 and DX12. I'm extremely happy about this. The one last test we're going to run for those of you who want it is we're going to keep it at 150% resolution scale, but we're going to switch it back to DX11 and run the test one more time. So be right back. Alright guys, we are back. 150% resolution scale at 1080p, which should be roughly around 1440p. We are at DX11 still, with everything maxed out on ultra settings, and we're comparing it now to the 91 average that we got on DX12. So let's see what happens at 1440p DirectX 11 max settings compared to the 91 average we got on DirectX 12. Let's see what happens. Alright, so we are in game now. Again, 150% resolution scale, DirectX 11 at 1440p, or roughly give about, we're at 150% resolution scale at 1080p. And we're getting in the 80s now. We were in the 90s before. We're using 11.8-ish gigabytes of RAM, which is much less than we were using before. And we're only using about 5.7 gigabytes of our VRAM. using roughly 50% of our CPU. So overall, throughout all of the tests, the one thing that we've seen is that this game is one of those games that would again benefit from a newer CPU, just like all the games that we've tested on this channel so far. All of them, without a doubt, would definitely benefit from a newer CPU. This game is no exception. I don't think it'd be a massive increase. It might just give you an extra like 10 FPS, but it would be nice to not see 50% of the CPU being used in a game like this. I think if you had something like a 5950X or a 5900X or even like a 10900K or even something along those lines, you'd probably only be using like, I don't know, maybe 15-20% of your CPU at max in one of those when you have all of those cores. But we're still using 80, or we're still getting 80 FPS in something like this as well. But our GPU usage, you can see we're only in the 80 or 80% range, somewhere like in that range at 1440p on DirectX 11. So I think that would be like, for me, I would just go use DX12. So we got an 89.3 average there compared to the, what, the 91 on DirectX 12. We got an, I think, yeah, DirectX 12 gave us a 91. Now we're at an 89. So I think overall, for me personally, I would just run this game at DirectX 12 if you have some of the newer hardware like a 3080. Simply because it seems to be like, yes, you get some slight micro stuttering here and there. It's very minor though, very minor. But you seem to be using more of your computer's horsepower, whereas DirectX 11, you saw at the very end there, we were only using like 80%, like 70 to 80% of our 3080, which to me, I wanted to use all of my 3080, and it was doing that on DirectX 12. It seems to push a higher peak FPS value on DirectX 12 versus DirectX 11 at the cost of slight micro stutters. So personally, I would run DirectX 12 in this if I could, and that's how I have been running it on my live streams, is DirectX 12. It's been butter smooth, but overall, all of these tests have been extremely, extremely good. I don't know what you guys are thinking in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of this game's performance in the comments down below. But for a 6700K on a 3080, getting, like, what was that, like 116 FPS average at 1080p in DirectX 11, or no, excuse me, DirectX 12 was 116 FPS average. That's awesome. Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. On the main menu here, I'm getting solid 144. So if you play 144 hertz, if you have a 144 hertz monitor, you're going to be getting that in this game, or at least you're going to get the majority of that in this, and it's a beautiful experience. And so there you guys have it. There you go. There are the benchmark numbers for Borderlands 3 on an i7 6700K and a 3080. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys are new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if it was helpful, if you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Again, thank you so much for 240 subscribers. That is a lot. That is so many that in such a short amount of time. Thank you to all the new people here. I hope we foster a good family on YouTube here. You guys are awesome. I'm enjoying doing this YouTube thing in my spare time. But again, if you guys want to catch me in my normal day-to-day life, you guys can watch me on my Twitch channel. Link will be in the description. I play pretty much everything. Currently, I'm playing Borderlands 2, though I'm catching up on the DLCs and playing those for the first time. But once again, thank you guys for watching the video. You guys are awesome, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!